Water actually tastes better when you drink with two hands. It really does.
Okay, well, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'm watching you do it, and if it tastes better to you, that's great. I was going to make an offhand political comment, but maybe I'll skip it and just let it go.
Yeah. That's why kids stay young. It keeps you young. I don't know what it is. It's something about that.
Okay.
Speaking about weirdness, actually good weirdness though. I'm actually reading through, just because we like recommending, books, novels, all kinds of things to encourage people to get inspired for their playing. But I'm reading through the huge, 200-page graphic novel on the Mirror Universe comic books that were published by IDW Publishing. Oh my goodness! If anybody wants to understand the Mirror Universe, read that graphic novel. Really puts in, and my favorite character, one of my favorite characters in TNG, but definitely my favorite character in the graphic novel is Reginald Barclay. Oh my goodness, this guy's amazing. He's so underserviced on TV. I was so happy when Voyager wrote him into several episodes.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, so we'll see how that works. Okay, so welcome everyone to another Continuing Conversations. I'm Michael Dismuke, a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG, and I'm a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG. Also, we have with us the amazing Jim Johnson.
Jim Johnson, I'm the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Modiphius Entertainment. Also science fiction and fantasy writer, but mostly here tonight to talk with Michael about the wonderful RPG Star Trek Adventures that we're responsible for, and just continuing to grow week after week, month after month, release after release, all for you to play with and enjoy. So hopefully you're digging it. I'm excited.
And since it's all about tonight, we've talked 2 weeks ago about the Command Division Supplemental Rulebook. Last week, we talked about the Operations Division, having us so much fun geeking out. Me and Jim could spend 3 hours talking about one book, coming up with stories. Today, we're focusing on the Sciences Division Supplement Rulebook. So to honor it, I will be drinking water with two hands all night. Because it's all about experimentation and boldly going where no other water drinker has gone before. All right. So first of all, Jim, if we're going to be jumping into the Science Division book, I am starting right away with the opening spread of the Sciences book. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up here because people have got to see this. Yeah. Let me get it into 2-page spread form if I can. I should have probably prepared this, but I'm not that slick or smart sometimes. So I'm just going to go ahead and share what I'm showing here. Let me go ahead and share screen because I want people. I'll describe what I'm sharing. I could get 1 page up so far. Can you see that, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So I got that. So this is just a one half of a 2-page spread. This is the art in the Science Division book. The only way I could explain it, amazing. It's almost inexplicable. So it's really a conceptual, metaphysical, artistic view of the universe from the Star Trek vantage point, whether it be bioforms, life forms, geometric shapes, characters from different time, space. How would you describe this amazing piece of artwork that opens up the Science Division?
Yeah, when I first saw it, I thought it was MC Escher meets Star Trek, basically, and I thought it was fantastic. Like I didn't at the time this book came out or it was being developed, I was an editor and writer, and I wasn't involved in this particular book all that much. I was working on a couple other books at the time, I think, and Sam Webb was still the line manager at the time, and so he commissioned this one. And I don't think I've actually gotten the story from Sam about what was behind this, but clearly it's very metaphysical and very kind of trippy, very much inspired by MC Escher for sure because of the looking at the stairways and stuff. But I thought it was really cool because it presents, like I look at this and I do look at it quite a bit actually because I got my I got my Star Trek books right next to my computer when I'm working. And if I need some inspiration, I'll just grab a book and flip through it. And invariably, I always come back to the science book and this piece of art, because it just tells me how much potential is wrapped up in Star Trek. Like all the weird, amazing, fascinating things that you can come up with is all alluded to in this picture.
Yeah, it makes me raise the question in my mind as I look at this, like, what is our universe comprised of? Where does reality and fantasy end? Where does the mind and physicality start? It's just to me, again, one day I'll write a story just based off that artwork.
Yeah. I mean, really, I was just looking at it. Like, there's a whole campaign. Like, you could do a whole campaign explaining every little component of that piece of art. Like, how did all that stuff come together? And like the big dramatic finale would be like all the multiverse converging into a big storyline or something.
Yeah, and who are and each one of the characters too, I was trying to identify them as I look at them. And who are they? Some of them are repeated twice. I don't know if you noticed that. Some of them are repeated twice.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, in fact, some of them are repeated 3 times in there. If you notice it, there's one gentleman who is holding a blade. He's shooting a phaser. He's in a shootout. He's working a computer console with another female, and he's standing there in Kirk's tunic. And I'm like, who is this guy? I don't know if you noticed that, but again, I pick stuff apart like that. And looking at like where could the story go? And I think that's a perfect introduction to the science division supplement book. It's really, when it all comes down to it, Starfleet and the mission is a scientific mission. It's an exploratory mission, isn't it? Yeah, it's not a war mission.
Right.
It's not just about flying through space. It's about pushing mankind to its boundaries. And so hence, what an introduction for the science division book that we're talking about today.
Yep.
All right. So let's jump into it, Jim. When you think about the science division book, what's one of your general highlights, 10,000 feet highlights?
I mean, in my worldview opinion, like Star Trek is science fiction, and science is half of that. It's all about, whether it's real science or quasi-science or plausible science or whatever, science of some degree, whether it's a soft science like anthropology or archaeology or the hard sciences, they're all in Star Trek somewhere. Like almost every episode has some sort of underpinning to science. And what better book to start, or not even to start, but to continue churning up ideas for science-based stories and for science-based characters than something like this. I mean, it just builds on everything that we had in the core book, where we talked about science and planets and physics and the scientific method and all this stuff, and just expands on it. So if you're playing a science character or a medical character or a counselor, this is the book for you. I mean, this has got so much stuff in it that I know, like, of all the division books. Well, okay, so Command is the most popular because it's got more starships in it. But I think this is the close number second. It might even be on the level with Command, because Star Trek is science, right? I mean, 55 years worth of Star Trek science is all baked in here. So this is just a wealth of material for you to use.
Yeah, and this one is only 140 pages. Honestly, when it comes to science and Star Trek, this could have been a 2,000-page volume, easily, encyclopedia, because there's no limit to the sciences. I mean, if you like something in the universe, it is its own science. Everything can be studied, whether it's a light bulb to a button to a solar flare. You could study that forever. So I want to tell people that the sciences division, when I go through it, it's the principles of how scientists think. It's the principles of the scientific method. And it's just scratching. Again, don't restrict yourself to what's listed in this book. You can do whatever you want, but this book just it whets your appetite to everything that could open up in Star Trek. So let's talk about the departments first. Let's jump into chapter 2, Jim. And there's 2 divisions to science that this book focuses on. Share that with us.
2 divisions of sciences. Yep. So you got your science. So the science division has sciences as a department, and then medical as a department, and then medical is further broken down, if you so choose, into medical doctors and counselors, especially in the next gen or later series. But you could have a counselor in other eras of play if you want to.
Yeah. And doctors, the term doctor, I like to clarify just because when I was a kid, I didn't understand it. Doctor does not mean medical sciences only. Doctors are people who have taken a level of expertise in any kind of science. So in our game, we have doctors who are doctors of sciences and astrophysics. So keeping that in mind, really the people who go into the sciences, if they're bridge officers, are really the top of their game. Wouldn't you say? They're probably like some of the best. We think about Spock, of course, who's undeniably probably the best, maybe one of the best temporal physicists and physicists out there, or we think about Seven of Nine, who definitely should have been a science officer at some point, or could have been a science officer at some point on cybernetics. So if you're choosing this kind of character, whether it's medical or any kind of sciences, you might be the Federation's leading expert on that subject, correct?
Sure, absolutely, possibly. I mean, you think about the 21st century where people are encouraged to learn for the sake of learning, right? You have people with multiple doctorates and multiple degrees and multiple lifetimes of experience. I mean, you think like Jadzia Dax, even though she was 20 something years old at the beginning of DS9, she was a brilliant scientist in her own right, even before being joined with the Dax symbiote. And so you are potentially among the top in your field, and you've chosen to join Starfleet and go do stuff out, literally out in the field,
right.
the galactic field, right? But I mean, you're a brilliant scientist. You're not just I mean, you could certainly be I don't even know what the term is, a young scientist working on their doctorate or whatever. But I mean, it's just.
Well, some scientists too take command. I want to keep in mind that two of our favorite captains are scientists. Janeway touts herself as a warp theorist and quite accomplished astrophysicist. Jean-Luc Picard is an archaeologist who got offered to lead his own expeditions that would have been just as glorious as being the captain of the Enterprise. So
Burnham primarily a scientist as well.
Oh, totally true. Yeah, she is. She's a xenoexobiologist or something. Xenobiologist. Xenoanthropologist. She's a xenoanthropologist, right? So even if you are a scientist and you say, "Well, I want to play a captain," that's not a conflict. It depends on really your ship's mission profile and the kind of project profiles you're getting. So. Right. You could be super creative if you want to. If everybody says, "I want to play a scientist," on your gaming group, one of those scientists could be the captain, for various amount of reasons. So don't restrict yourself, by the career tracks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so again, there's some review of different things scientists can do in exploratory divisions. They could do survey missions, first contact protocol, scientific mystery protocols, lost starship protocols, temporal mission protocols. Again, a lot of meat in order to help you create your stories. Anything else about that you want to highlight, Jim?
Again, just like with the operations book and even the command book, there's just a wealth of potential here to, like, if you want to come up with, whether you're a player or a game master, want to come up with story ideas for your group and your ship to explore, you could hang a whole campaign off of some of these ideas. Like maybe you're attached to the Department of Temporal Investigations, and all you do is time stuff. Maybe you're on a time ship. Maybe your ship is just specially equipped with experimental technology that you could pull out of the operations book and drop in here and include the science angle on it. It's just more cool ideas here, really, more than anything else.
Yeah, some of the details that go into, which I appreciate, went into detail a little bit of how science vessels work, also science outposts. Everyone's heard about how much I love a Regular One, and I really wish I could pick that place apart. Regular One has fascinated me since I was 7 years old watching Wrath of Khan. And so I really appreciate that. And other great institutes are mentioned in here, like we hear the Daystrom Institute a lot. So we get a little blurb about the Daystrom Institute, including notable characters, notable members of the Daystrom Institute, and other Federation science organizations. I think about Picard, where in season 1, the Daystrom Institute they name dropped that a lot. So you could have a whole game around missions that those kind of members have to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, we could write TV shows off all this. All right. How would you? We talked about it several episodes ago. There's a whole section here about medical officers. Jim, is there any reason to be bored if you're a medical officer? Let's repeat what we said last time, maybe about.
No, there is no excuse for being bored in a Star Trek game. There is just so much potential for your character to be doing something. I mean, just look at what any of the series, any of the episodes. The Starfleet officers are doing things. They're always doing something. You shouldn't be sitting around waiting for something to happen. You should be out doing it. Like literally every Starfleet officer is a scientist in some degree, right? It may not be your primary focus, but you've got to have the science background, because like you could be the tactical officer, but what happens if all of a sudden you're the only person on the bridge and some sort of disaster? You've got to figure stuff out. You may be the one faced with the scientific anomaly, and you're going to have at least the basic understanding of how physics and geometry and applied theoretical astronavigation works. So you got to have the theory, because all Starfleet officers are brilliant to some degree, and that's kind of cool. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, and Beverly. No, and I mean, I love the episode when Beverly Crusher in the future. She's the captain of her own Olympic class, I think, starship it was, which again is focusing that, people want to view Starfleet as a Navy, but that's just a small portion of what they do. They're constantly going on scientific exploration missions. So it's really what your crew during your session 0 wants to make of your game. There's adventure to be found no matter where you're at in the universe. And I really appreciate going on to talking about how to develop the characters in chapter 3.1, where it talks about that quest to find new life and new civilizations will never leave you bored. And it talks about how to create science characters, which has been done in the other division books. It gives you a whole new bunch of focuses, my favorite thing, that you could focus on with this. Did you have a favorite focus that came up in this book that you had seen starting on like page 36? There's a whole bunch of new focuses listed just for science characters. Were there any that stood out to you?
Well, I'm always a fan of archaeology, but getting into the kind of the weird, funky ones, you got photonic applications. The phrase photonic applications just makes me happy for a weird reason. Like, and that's all about holographic technology and holograms. So like, I'm sure Barclay, like you were talking about Barclay earlier, he'd be all over that kind of action. Unified field theory, temporal mechanics, warp theory, quantum mechanics. I mean, these are big brain kind of concepts that are out there that you can find all kinds of ways to fold and mold into a story. In fact, I know you've talked about these before.
Yeah. Well, the one I liked one of the skills that I think is overlooked a lot by players of Star Trek Adventures is listed here in a focus, and that's deflector operations. Deflector is used. I'm going to risk to say deflectors are mentioned and used more in Star Trek than phaser arrays. I'm going to risk that statement and say that the deflector is this amazing piece of miracle technology that can do so much in Star Trek. And yet I'm going to challenge all you players in gaming groups right now. How many of you have a specialist in deflector operations? This thing, when it comes to game terms, I usually overlay it into structure. If you're doing a role, it's going to be structure in science, structure in engineering. It could be structure and con. It could be structure and medicine, depending on how you're using it. Maybe to irradiate a planet and get rid of a disease on a planet. So to me, deflector operations is one of the cooler, most underused focuses that's mentioned here in the science division for the first time.
Nice. And I'll add, because again, this chapter provides a wealth of new options for focuses and talents for science characters and also medical characters. So like if the stuff in the core book wasn't enough to give you what you need to make your character unique and interesting, hit this for more focuses and for more talents. I will say that this book has the talent that has my most favorite title of a talent is in this book, which I just I read it and I was like, oh, I love this. I just love the concept of this talent. And that's it's a science talent on page 39, I guess. I can't read the text. It's baffling briefing.
I love that one.
It gives you the ability to use your science discipline instead of command when you're in a social conflict. And I just love the concept of this scientist getting caught up in the middle of a situation, and they rely on their science and their technobabble to just completely confuse their adversary. Just the fact that it's the title of the talent is baffling briefing. I just love it. It made me so happy.
I'm gonna have to point out some of the art too that's equally good on the same page. I'm gonna share this picture right here. Can you let's move it so you can see it. Can you see this art piece here?
Yep.
Okay. I love visit caught alien species. They're very rarely seen in Star Trek. Our transporter chief is visit caught. And so I was so happy to finally see this character here as a science officer. So great job to whatever amazing artist went and found this obscure alien species, which hopefully one day I get to write a whole story about, because I just love how they look. They're my Kermits of the Star Trek universe, I think.
Awesome.
So good job on the art there. I thought was really cool. So again, a lot of fun stuff. Again, we got to say, don't limit yourself to these focuses and talents. Get even more creative. They're just samples to kind of spark the imagination, right?
Absolutely.
The same thing goes into the medical skills. You get really detailed on the medical focuses here, which include like anesthesiology, dentistry. That would be interesting to see a dentist story. That put places. I really like myself, and then you can talk about the one you like the best, Jim, out of these. I liked imaging systems. I thought that was a brilliant focus that's introduced into the medical game here. Like that could go so many different places. I mean, think about it. If you picture a sick bay in Star Trek, you always see that screen above everyone's head with the little body there that's scanning whatever they're scanning.
Right.
And who's the person who invented, maintains, and is an expert on that? So I just thought that was a really cool focus. What do you like about this section?
Again, the focuses and the talents. I think I just see there's again, I haven't read this in a while. Under 42, under creating medicine characters, some new roles here, like the head nurse, chief surgeon, anesthesiologist, physician's assistants. Like this is just more opportunities for just interesting characters that you could play. So like if you are playing a medical focused game, or if you just want to play a different kind of character, right? You don't want to be the chief medical officer, but you want to be the head nurse, or you want to be a PA on the ship, and that just gives you different storytelling potential. And here we are at the time of this recording, we're 4 days away from Strange New Worlds coming out.
Yep.
3 days away from Strange New Worlds coming out, and I know that Nurse Chapel is going to be a big key character on that, along with Dr. Mbenga. And is Chapel a head nurse at this point in time? I'm not sure. Is she physician's assistant? But that's just another character that you could create, and just instead of being the chief of sciences or the chief engineer or the chief tactical officer or whatever, you could be, this just gives you some more options here to play with. And again, I mentioned this in the operations discussion, but again, taking those new roles in the player's guide and combining them with this gives you just a whole new wealth of potential. Like you could be a medical expert, or you could be a enlisted officer on the ship in medical, and you could be a medical expert on the ship, and you could still use a lot of this content. So I'm just the potential for this game is just ridiculous.
The division books are equal to, I just picture taking it and curling up, going to Lake Tahoe, getting a cabin, getting a fire on, a glass of wine, and sitting here. This is what I do. I flip through it and I just sit there with a blanket, and I'm like, there's so much you could do with these stories. One of the things I liked also about this book is chapter 4 about research and development. One of the things I'm going to push my players to do, and if you're a player, I'm going to push you to do it. And if you're a game master right now, I'm going to push you to push your players to do it, and really get into understanding how scientists think.
Yeah.
We've talked about the scientific method before, but you can really stall a game if everyone just sits there waiting for the game master to tell them the answer. Mm-hmm. Star Trek Adventures is built that you explore, you ask why, you ask how things work, what's behind it, what's the motive. And I really found that chapter 4 about research and development takes what scientists actually do in real life and gets it into player form, right? Not only does it, of course, talk about medical equipment, kind of like in the operations book where we talked about engineering equipment, but it really makes you think about when you're interacting with something, what kind of questions to ask to figure out a solution. What's your take on that, Jim?
No, I think you're right. I think this harkens to how your characters should never be bored in a Star Trek game, right? If a game master has presented you with a question or an issue or a situation, the first thing to do to not be bored is to ask why. Why is it doing what it's doing? Why is it not doing what it's supposed to be doing? Like that's the first step to a scientific, forming a theory and forming a solution. Is like ask, okay, we're presented with this situation. Why did it come to pass? Why is it not working? Why is it working the way it's working? I mean, just by asking a question and then doing something is so important to get into that Starfleet mindset where, you're playing a game, yes, obviously. And sometimes the game master might be running it out of a module or out of a pre-printed adventure. But instead of just sitting there as a player, waiting for the game master to spoon feed you the next piece of information, be your character and ask why. Right. Always ask why. Or even the 5 questions, right? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Just ask questions, and asking those questions and spending some momentum and start rolling some dice, getting into some tasks. We'll start breaking it down into chunks, and then you can work with your other players to figure it out. So please don't be bored.
So here's some game master's guidance. So say for instance, you're playing with a bunch of new players who aren't familiar with Star Trek, and you say you've just come across a subspace rift.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you're a new player, you're going to sit there and be like, well, what's a subspace rift? Yep. Well, there's sections of this book, like on page 60, it talks about subspace rift. Read it to your players. Give it to them to read. Copy paste it if you're playing on Discord. The basics of what a Starfleet officer would know about the Q continuum, about subspace rifts, about temporal anomalies, so that now, just with that 2-paragraph, 3-paragraph explanation, the players have enough basis of Starfleet 101 that they can start asking those questions. So as a game master, don't leave them dry with technobabble. And as a player, when you get this information, pick it apart. Start asking questions. And so I thought it was really cool in the R&D chapter here, how it covered a lot of those common tropes in Star Trek. And so if you're a game master, you have the responsibility to make sure people are up to speed so they can start playing the game with you. Right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I would add, Michael, certainly giving your players stuff to read is valuable and worthwhile to give them the background, and another way to present this information when your players who don't know Star Trek that well invariably say, well, what is a subspace interfold matrix? You can have Lieutenant Smythe or whatever say, well, as you know, Captain, subspace intermission phaser is blah, 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 blah. And you can give them the 10-second spiel explaining to the audience as you're explaining to the character. And you can even add in that character's perspective, right, and color it. You can say, well, those good for nothing Klingons developed this technology in the late 2200s, and now they've spread their filth all across the Beta Quadrant and blah blah blah. And now you've added a little bit more nuance to it, right? But so you don't just have to hand your players something to read. You can fold it into the narrative. But I mean, each option is equally valid. I just know that in my experience, like handing a group of players something to read invariably brings the game to a screeching halt, because they're like, oh, now I've got to read this thing about what this anomaly is, as opposed to just kind of doing it organically. There's a lot of techniques around it. I just wanted to throw this out there.
We've talked about it before. Actually, we talked about this in our section about the value of NPC characters. And I wrote some articles on Continuing Mission about it, is that I bring NPCs purely to bring up that conversation. Yeah. You're right. We play over Discord, so I actually never just send a chunk of text to them. It's always in dialogue form in some form. So I do have to agree with that. But as a game master, if you're unsure of how to state it, all the work's done for you here in this science book. Yeah. And that will launch the conversation. Again, my first thing is yes, and don't worry about being perfect. Just have fun and make everyone feel intelligent, like they're experts, and you're going to have a lot of fun in your game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll add, just as a piece of color, this is one of the things that I really like about playing online, is that with Discord or Roll20 or other, whatever format or platform you're using, it is so easy to cut and paste something and do a private message to a player character or to a player and say, here's this interesting piece of information that I'm going to introduce in the game. Now your character has this information folded into your role playing, right? And so I'll send somebody the 5-line blurb about what is a subspace manifold, and why is it important, and I can give that to them in a private message so that nobody else knows it's coming, and then I can kind of introduce it in the game, and then the player can take it and run with it and sound smart. And
right, and all the other players go, wow,
yeah. And he goes, yeah, and I can sit back and say, yeah, I made you look good, and that's good because that's good for the game.
Exactly.
So
that's super cool.
Little trick and technique there.
Yeah. We're all doing the pseudoscience stuff. We're having fun. We're creating a universe here.
Yep.
Chapter 5, using the sciences division, is very similar to using the command division, using the operations division, in that there are science and medical department storylines. As a quick summary, so we don't repeat what we said before, is it's showing you how to tailor games, no matter what they are, for your particular type of character, medical or science. What I really wanted to focus on, Jim, with this chapter was chapter 5.3 about spatial and planetary phenomenon, which is super, super fun and necessary to know if you're flying a ship through outer space, right?
Absolutely. You jumped ahead. Let me jump over there.
Yeah, I did, because again, we talked about plot components before and how to wrap characters, so I don't want to repeat our last 2 episodes. But
spatial and planetary phenomena. Yeah, this is just expanding on what was in the core book, and I'm willing to bet, I don't have the credits page in front of me, but I'm willing to bet that Aaron Palea wrote a chunk of this, because this just feels like him all over the place. But it's just more stuff like, your common layperson may not know much about nebulas or novas and supernovas, but if you want to sound smart and you want it to sound plausible, this is probably enough to get you by in most of your games. Now, of course, I know that Aaron is in your game, and you personally are going to have a hard time sneaking anything scientific past him without him raising the red flag and saying, wait a minute, Michael, what are you doing?
Actually, I'm going to give credit. I'm going to give credit to Aaron. He is a king of yes and. He really does say, okay, if this is happening, it's obviously something new. Let's explore it. And then, he maybe nudged me a little bit with that article from Nova or NASA. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. But no, he's actually a really fun person to play with.
Nice. Yeah. So just a ton of more information in here for science, which is always useful. I know that he did even more of this in the Shackleton book. So like if you got the Shackleton science stuff and this science stuff and the stuff that's in the core book, you're probably set for the rest of your life as a Star Trek game master or player. If you want it to sound, good enough. Like, I mean, certainly you could take all this and then go buy some science books and do a deeper dive into specific, scientific phenomenon or anomalies or nebulas or whatever. But for those of you who are casual Star Trek fans and you just want enough to make it sound good, this is going to help you so much for all the different things that you can come up with. And again, like I know you love plot hooks and plot ideas and plot seeds. Everything in here is just full of that stuff.
Well, and let me give Game Master's guidance again on how to use this. There's a lot of good terminology in here. So what I'll do, I'm on page 91, black holes, neutron stars, and pulsars. I'm in column 2, line number 4, and there's a term there called frame dragging. Okay, what's frame dragging? So what I'll do is I'll cut and paste that term into Google, and now I end up in an article on frame dragging where it says frame dragging is an effect on space-time predicted by Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity that is due to non-static stationary distribution of mass energy. I'll cut and paste that sentence into the game because Aaron, who wrote this, gave me that one word, and then I can go sound professional so if you have Google or something, you can all of a sudden have these amazing conversations, even send your players the link and let them grab some terminology off of it too. And I let them create solutions based off maybe a sentence. It's like, okay, let's go with that. I'm not going to disprove this theory. Let's have fun with it. So there's enough, again, tidbits in this chapter to really give you just enough technobabble to sound Star Trek. And of course, we know the true story is around the drama. Oftentimes, it's not about all the technobabble, but it's really about the human condition with that. All right, cool. We've talked a lot about ship's counselors before, Jim. We, in fact, dedicated a grab bag episode about that a few weeks back. Anything special that you want to focus on this chapter that you think people should be aware of about counseling?
I think, honestly, more than anything else, I just think you should be aware of it. I think because we only see a counselor on Next Generation, and then a little bit in Discovery season 3 and 4 when they started giving Culber more to do as a quasi counselor. I think. You had Guinan and even McCoy did a little bit of counseling.
Yeah, the guy on lower decks too. The guy with the glasses, the bird guy.
Oh yeah, was it Miglimo? Dr. Miglimo?
Yeah.
With the food references, right? I just think I think counselor. I think you would need the right group to do it well, but it would be just a really fascinating character to play, whether it's mixed in with another role or if that's just your main focus. But I think it's a good idea that they added it because, like, you have to think that here's a ship of 100, 200, 300, even more people going out into the cosmos, and that's really your family for years. So if you're on a 5-year mission, that's the people that you're with. And there's always something going to be going on. Even in this day and age, we know all about post-traumatic stress syndrome and all these other things that are out there. And like, you have to think that, like, if you think of any given episode of Star Trek, like, there's some really traumatic stuff that happens. And just the nature of syndicated episodic television is that they're all better the next episode for the most part. They don't normally carry on the conversations, but like when something horrific happens to somebody, it doesn't just go away. And I think that's something that Discovery does a really good job of illustrating, is that, the horrible stuff that you experience, you've got to live with it and you've got to work your way through it. And you need somebody that oftentimes you need somebody to help you through that. And that's what trained counselors do. So I think if a group is willing to go to that level and to tell those kind of stories, you definitely want to have a counselor. And I would think, as much as I think a player captain, or as much as I think a non-player captain is wasted, right? Because there's so much potential with a player captain as opposed to a non-player captain. I think a player character counselor would be really valuable because you can have those important conversations with your other characters. And there's just so much rich drama there to play with.
Yeah, we definitely love ours on our ship. I hearken back to the focuses section 2, where stress management was actually one of the new focuses that's listed here. And I thought that was so appropriate for what life is like in space.
Yeah.
Cool. We know that you love your roll tables. And so chapter 5.5 focuses on creating aliens and gives a lot of cool options for how to create an alien. Was this the first time in any book that this was listed, how to roll up an alien, like where they come from, their culture, and all that? Was that in the core rulebook at all, or is this an expansion on that?
Oh gosh, I'd have to remember. There's some stuff in the core rulebook, but I don't think it's random dice rolling so much. I think actually, you know what? There's stuff in the core rulebook about creating planets, and you do some random dice rolling. So this was, I think, the first place where we actually put in stuff about creating a culture and a species and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and there were some, I know it references the traits from chapter 10 of the core rulebook, some of the special rules. So it does talk about that, but I just don't remember the roll table. So this is an expansion on, really, if you want to just make random aliens, you could do that. Some people just do pre-gens or whatever, but so I know a lot of people do enjoy making their own creatures and having those roll tables available. Likewise with the hostile environments and hazards on chapter 5.6, where there was a really good expansion on biological hazards on page 106, which instead of just sitting there as a game master like, oh, what's dangerous about this planet, I actually use this quite a bit.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I really do. And I like it because we can't know all of the different situations on each different planet that are presented. And so I love getting ideas, even like fatigue. It talks about fatigue. I can create fatigue as a complication, which I never would have done unless I saw this before. And I started, if someone's going to have a 70-pound pack and I tell them they got to walk 10 kilometers, sorry, a kilometer in, you're going to start feeling it.
Right. Yeah, fun anecdote here. So this book, I think if I remember right, Sam reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got a couple pages of the science book that we need to fill with content. What do you think?" Because I was editing it at the time, And I was like, well, I think we're short. Like we talk a little bit about hostile environments and hazards, about like atmospheric conditions and gravity and temperature and how things can destroy you, but we don't really talk about like infectious diseases or wounds or just like, and I think I threw out a couple examples like the aphasia virus, and just like, I mean, obviously there's tons of examples in the shows of like the crew getting some weird disease or infection or parasite or something. And I was like, well, we don't really talk about that in here, and this would be a great opportunity to talk about because it's a medical thing and it's a science thing. And he's like, okay, well, you got 2 pages, so write me 1,000 words on something. I was like, well, okay, if you're gonna throw the gauntlet down like that. So I took the easy way out. I reached out to Nathan. I said, hey, Nathan, I need to write a section on biological hazards. Have we done anything even remotely like this in any of the other 2D20 games? And he sent me a couple of pages of notes from Mutant Chronicles, I think, which was one of the other 2D20 games at the time. Okay. And I was like, well, I can adapt this. So I took his stuff and I did an adaptation, and I put the Star Trek, focus on it. And then I created all these examples: the Kalanora syndrome, the Psi 2000 virus, and infected wound. I created all those and threw it in here, and thought, oh, this would be a good template for people to use if they wanted to. And I'm not confident I've seen too many fans come up with their own biological hazards. So I'm happy to hear that you've been using them, because I thought my intention, like when I was writing this, is that some creative fan would write like tons of examples and have them available for player characters and game masters to use on like I could almost envision these being on a card, right? Like here's the aphasia virus, here's the vector, the virulence, the incubation, the intervals, and the symptoms, and you could like drop that into a game. And so like while your player characters are doing some whatever the A plot is, right? All of a sudden here comes this B plot with this aphasia virus or Psi 2000 virus or some weird thing that the medical officer has to deal with on top of everything else, right? We see that plenty of times in the shows. So that was the intention behind this. I don't know how well it hit or didn't hit, but again, fans, hey, if you're out there and you've actually used these rules, I would love to hear how you're using them. Like I'm grateful if you like them, but I'm not looking for praise. I just want to know if these are tools that you're actually using in your toolbox.
I'm sure people are. I know even I was using on page 108 weather. I had a campaign where the entire B story was about crash landing on a Class J planet, a Transjovian planet. And I was here at everything from wind to radiation and going back a couple pages to pressure and how that would affect people. And they barely got out of it with their lives. It was really an exciting thing. And again, instead of me sitting there and having to think like, oh, how does this work? I flip through the signs saying, oh, it's all there. Here's the rules. Let me get to playing and focus on that instead of having to create mechanics off the bat.
I think weather was one of the little bullet points I added to the development of this, just to say, hey, somebody should talk about weather. And the reason I did that is because one of the many campaigns my co-GM and I were going to run back in the day was going to be a space station game. And we were going to do a station on a planet, and the planet was the whole shtick, right? It had all kinds of interesting things going on the planet. And one of the things that we decided to build into it was this weather anomaly where every 6 months, some really significant storms would occur on the planet that would render it unable to communicate with the outside, without the outside world. So like the crew of the station knew that for 6 months they would be isolated due to the storm patterns and phenomena and stuff. So we built in all kinds of interesting plot hooks around just the fact of the weather, right? Maybe you're an away team out there on a mission on the planet and you crash or something happens and you can't get back to the base in time. So you got to weather that storm for a period of time. So we really try to, focus on not so much space and adventure and stuff, but like you're on a planet and you've got to deal with the weather. You're dealing with hurricanes or tornadoes or just all the stuff that, like here on Earth, right? Like the weather can kill you if you're not careful.
Well, I would have totally, honestly, I think the one roll table I made a hat here because for wind, I picked it randomly in our game. Actually, I think it's meant to create a wind factor 4 to show that if you're going to try to fly a shuttle into this Transjovian planet, good luck with that. But I could see a table where you roll a 6-sided dice and 5 and 6 would represent 5, but that would determine the random wind factor for whatever you're doing. Because if you're trying to slow your players down, maybe they're on a planet, give them some wind too. I mean, that's believable. You're on an alien planet and making
Absolutely.
everything more difficult, whether it's firing a phaser or running up a hill, there's all these little things that you could do to make it so much more interesting. And I love also the sources of radiation too, quick definitions for radiation. Again, it's something where you can go to Memory Alpha, type in and see all the episodes where this radiation ever played out to. Don't limit yourself to what's in the episodes or what's listed here. These radiations are magical plot tropes that can do so much. And so get really creative with them, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool. And then again, like the other division books, we go into personnel. Some fantastic superstars of science are listed in here, including Dr. Richard Daystrom. These are names that drop all the time. Dr. Carol Marcus, man, I'm on the Regula trip today, of course, the creator of the Genesis device. And I loved her value. Can I cook or can't I? That was so great when she said that in Wrath of Khan, right? So you have some characters and you could pull them into your game. Don't think that just because you finish seeing them on TV or movies that's the end of the story, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, you think about Carol Marcus, right? When we only see her in the one movie, she's got a whole career before that movie, and no doubt she's got a career after that movie. And of course, she probably has to deal with the fallout from the whole Genesis device, right? And she's probably sent to Starfleet to have a conversation.
That would be,
I saw the light bulb.
Oh my God, that would be an amazing Lost era story.
In fact, I can think of a campaign that might find some benefit in the tying Carol Marcus in. Because there's so many
well probes, and you got it.
I mean, there's so many things you could do with it, right? I mean, think about. Okay, now we're going to go down a rabbit hole, right? Because you think about Carol Marcus, her experiment was a success, but it was also a failure,
right?
Right. And then
because of her son, he did the illegal protomatter. He used protomatter. He wasn't supposed to.
Right. Yeah. So the moon, the inside the moon was a success, and then the torpedo blew up and created the Genesis planet. That was a abject failure, I guess. But her son was killed. Right. So coming out of Star Trek II and Star Trek III, what's Carol Marcus? Is she a broken scientist who's like her career's over, or does she does the gear click differently in her brain, and all of a sudden she's she becomes like the mad scientist off to prove herself again, and she does an even more dire experiment beyond the Genesis device? I mean, where could you go with that? You could do anything with it. I mean, maybe she hasn't given up the story, right? Maybe she wants to go do it again.
Well, I'm going to go even further. And I always forget the character's name, the one in Voyage Home who worked at the Cetacean Institute who came forward.
Oh, yeah, Jillian Taylor.
Jillian Taylor. Yeah. Imagine if Jillian Taylor approached Dr. Marcus to say, hey, let's terraform a planet for whales so the cetaceans can actually procreate. And she has to convince Marcus to go back into the research to save the cetaceans. And Starfleet might approve that. Or Starfleet says, hell no. And Carol Marcus says, okay, well, screw you guys. I'm going to go talk to the Romulans, or I'm going to go talk to the Klingons, or I'm going to go talk to some other polity and get funding that way. And then, so now Carol Marcus has gone rogue with some sort of thing. And now the crew is forced to go track her down. Where is Carol Marcus? She's the rogue
scientist.
I think we just did our session 0. All right. As you can see, everyone.
Anyway, so you can see how these books can impact you, because you can just take one character and you know what, this is not to digress even further, but this is something that I really like to do, and I think this just sparks conversations I've been having on social media with fans who are very vocal in their distaste for Discovery. But like the setting, right? And I would say, well, look, if you buy the Discovery, or if you look at the Discovery book, then don't buy it, but whatever, I'm not plugging it. But if you just look at the setting, there's so much potential in the setting. There's so much content in the setting. You can take just little setting bits and pieces out of it and just go blow it up and do some amazing things. Like you and I just riffed on Carol Marcus for 10 minutes. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking about her being like this super desperate scientist looking to prove herself, or to prove her experiment, and so she goes rogue with some third party polity and wreaks havoc.
Try to resurrect her dead son. That's the question. It was done with Spock.
Oh wow, you got dark. Yeah, so bring in the whole illegal augment genetic manipulation kind of
And we
stuff.
should contact Noonien Soong, who's in here. We should contact Dr. Soong, who's in here. There's just so many. Our point being this: these books are purely seeds to a great story. And again, I'll say it again. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Those of you who are complaining about what you're seeing, we challenge you to write a better story with Star Trek Adventures RPG, and we want to hear about it. We'll always be happy to post your story, continuing missions, and let the critics open themselves up to you like you open yourselves up to shows. So strap it on and play this game and let's see the better stories you feel you can create. That's the challenge we give you with Star Trek Adventures RPG, which
And in fact, I'll harken back to something I think you said in the previous episode about how writers maybe are using this content. Like maybe you're not a gamer, right? Maybe you don't want to play the game or don't know how to play the game, or you don't have a group of friends online or in life that you want to play. But maybe you're a fiction writer. Maybe you're writing Star Trek fanfic. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of us have got started writing fanfic. Use these books as plot hooks and idea generators, right? Michael and I just riffed on Carol Marcus. So maybe take an idea like that from one of these books and write some cool fanfic. Oh gosh, I don't know. Burnham uses her time suit and gets involved with Marcus, and they both go back in time to. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, right?
We're coming to this in this episode, but I'm telling you, right after I'm doing this, I'm going to research Carol Marcus, because I don't think a novel's ever covered what happened to her after. If I'm wrong, someone write me. But I'm now dying to know what happened to Carol Marcus as a character. She's fascinating.
Great question. I honestly don't recall. I'm sure she's come up in a novel somewhere, but what her actual fate is, I'm not sure has been told yet. So we'll have to. That'll be a good sign. That'll be a good research project, Michael. I'd love to hear what you've come up with.
I'm going to look into that because her and also Gillian Taylor, I think Gillian Taylor is the name you said, have always fascinated me. Like, where did this person, like DTI, Department of Temporal Investigations, had to come after her at some point, right? Yeah. And so where's that story? Where did she end up? There's all these questions. Oh boy, but that's science in Star Trek. It never ends, which is of course why we wanted to highlight this third of the division books. Anything else before we wrap up, Jim?
I'm just being reminded. I'm looking at the NPCs. Of course, we put a whole bunch of science NPCs in here, not just the name characters from the movies and the shows and stuff, but Starfleet research scientist, a terraformer. So if you want to get into some terraforming, of course, that's a perfectly legal operation. The Genesis torpedo notwithstanding. Vulcan Science Academy professor emeritus. Sure, you could put him in a story, or her, or them in a story somewhere. Astrocartographer. What a great NPC that could be. I just imagine like on a Galaxy class ship, like somebody's going to be in charge of the stellar cartography lab. And what if it's this particular character, like, and you really need some information, and they're going to be really persnickety about how you go about getting it. Maybe it's like a Zachdorn or something, and they want to be very precise about what you're looking for, and you have to be very specific. Professor, xenobiology department head, science officers, more supporting characters, grad student,
always really
lab
cool.
Technician.
Yeah, I thought grad student was actually really cool. They have a specialist, and lab tech is actually what I use to write Linus for the Star Trek Discovery pack, because that's basically all we saw him doing was doing lab experiments. So that was my basis for him. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So just a wealth of cool stuff in here for sciences. I again, like with the command book, I haven't looked in this book for a while. I like I said, from time to time I flip through it just for ideas and just to look at the art, just to be inspired. But I haven't done a deep dive like this in a while, so it's just great to see all this great content again, because now it's been 5 years since I've looked at it in depth.
If the universe favors us, Jim, then we'll live out that Twilight Zone episode where you come to the Bay Area for some reason, a massive earthquake hits, and we are trapped only with our Star Trek Adventures books, our dice, and plenty of canned food for generations to last us, so we can one day play out all the stories we fantasize about. And unlike the Twilight Zone, our glasses won't fall off and shatter so that we can't see anything. If you remember that episode.
I love it.
All right. But again, endless gaming for an endless universe, which is so awesome. All right, Jim. Whew, my brain's exploding right now. I want to go right. And so thank you for doing another continuing conversations. We want to do our shout outs as normal. We have 3 brick and mortars we want to shout out because brick and mortars are so key to keep RPG alive. David Rice sends us Black Knight Games in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Sam Ferguson, Yadaquest in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Hobie Koban, Nagwasangya Regan, loving your name, bro. Enchanted Grounds, Littleton, Colorado. They've got the tricorder set there. Pick it up. It's fun. We did the unboxing of it a couple weeks ago. Who do you want to shout out, Jim?
Oh boy, you cover the gamers, the gaming source so well, and I think I've covered the staff and just everybody, Modifius and all the freelancers. So I just for this one, I'll keep it on theme. And thank, this is going to be such a huge thank you, right? All the scientists that informed Star Trek and inspired Star Trek, and all the science advisors who worked on Star Trek shows to like help make the science sound plausible. And then thank you to all the writers who developed science and quasi-science and everything that helped inform this book and all of our books, really. But all Star Trek, right? Just it's so great that people were able to take some of these big concepts and like kind of distill it down so that the layman like me can get it and be inspired by it. But also sometimes they put some really technical stuff in there that make the more hardcore scientists like, oh yeah, okay, that works.
Yeah, and Star Trek, that Star Trek makes me love math and science. It makes me want to understand it, and it's just what's our appetite for what is true out there. Math is fact, math is science, and so for kids, I think again, getting them interested in science in this way is a great bridge. And for me, that's probably why I watch every episode of Nova that I can.
Yeah. I'm just, at my heart, I love it. I love it so much when TV shows hit the sense of wonder button, and I can just sit back and be in awe of what I'm seeing. Whether it's special effects or just the concepts that are coming up. I think that's what really excites me about Star Trek is just that sense of wonder. Like, you're on a spaceship in the great big galaxy, and there's just so much cool stuff to see, like a pulsar or a nebula or just something happening. It's just like, wow. That's just like me personally. That's my form of escapism, and that's why I play role-playing games. Is for me, for especially Star Trek, because a lot of people want to be the hero with the sword and killing the bad guy and vanquishing the dragon, and that's totally cool. I used to be in that mold, and now I've gotten older, and it's like I know that I personally am never going to leave Earth, right? I'm never going to get into a ship and get into orbit. It's just the nature of the beast, right? There's just no way to do that right now, unless I pay a ridiculous amount of money to Elon Musk or something and get shot up in orbit. But so I know that I will not have that opportunity. And so I can imagine it though. I can be a character doing these things. And the more a game master or a TV show or a movie can push my sense of wonder and let me imagine things that I can only see through the Hubble space telescope or the pictures that NASA provides us or something. That's what really gets me excited about Star Trek is that sense of something bigger than myself is way out there somewhere. And now I get to imagine it or I get to see it with a picture or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say never. And hopefully you get up in space.
We'll see.
I get up in space one day.
Yeah, we'll see.
I have faith.
Oh, but importantly, Michael, do you have faith with the heart?
Yes. Nothing's gonna stop me. Nothing's gonna stop me. All right.
And on that note.
All right. Good. Well, everyone, IDIC, keep it going.
Live long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everybody.